We're back after an extended Christmas break. Sorry about the delay. Let's get into it. The 12 is a Belgian series, and if you're new to this channel, what you need to know about Belgium is that when it comes to making TV crime series, Belgium has two extremes. There's Vlamland, the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, which has produced such series as Tabula Rasa and Undercover, both of which were named in my top 10 foreign TV series. And then there's Wallonia, the French-speaking part of Belgium, which has produced La Trêve and Unit 42, for which I guess I can say Unit 42's music was good, La Trêve's wasn't. The 12 in the original language is Die Twaalf, which is great because being Dutch Belgium means it has a chance of being actually okay. From memory, there is very, very little English and absolutely no French whatsoever. As I started watching this series, I thought, surely Flemish Belgium can't pull off another one, surely not. And as I got to the end of the first episode, I was like, yep, they're doing it again. We start with the selection of a jury, and this sets up the quality of filmmaking craft right from the start, because it sounds boring, but it isn't, and nor are any of the courtroom scenes, and it's all to do with the craft, the movement of the camera, the selecting of the shot, the editing, and the acting. These are some of the best courtroom scenes I've ever watched. It's helpful to know going into this series that the Belgian court system is totally different to ours in most English-speaking countries. You'll see a lot of stuff here that seems like it would never be allowed, because it wouldn't be in our courts. But a friend of mine who's studied law assures me that this is actually how it works in what I believe is called the inquisitorial system, where the aim is just to get to the bottom of what happened rather than a certain respect for the process. Happily, it also makes for much more interesting court proceedings. Although there are still liberties taken, I'm certain of it, there are moments where I just thought, surely that's not allowed to happen in any court system. But they don't really get in the way of the trial forming the foundation of this series. Then there are the crimes themselves. There are two separate crimes and they're a little bit different in their nature, and neither of them are particularly recent. Also, neither of them are as Hollywood-esque as we're used to seeing, even from other foreign shows. In other shows, the crimes are normally a bit more spectacular, and of course, normally it's the police who are solving them. Whereas, although the 12 is a mystery, it's more a question of guilt than it is about solving the crime. What's really engaging here is the way this series looks at evidence. It's kind of like a fictional version of the podcast Serial. Although we're shown very, very little, it gets really deep into evidence, and all this evidence gets so tangled up and you can't remember every witness's testimony. And then every now and then one character will just strip it all back and say, well, if we ignore all these circumstantial things, what have we actually got here? And the directors never tell you that you're wrong. They don't hand evidence to you on a plate and then make you feel stupid because you missed something that they never actually properly showed you. They hand you all the same evidence that the jury have, and they say, well, how would you vote? And maybe it's even because of that the case here feels very real. At times it's like watching a dramatization of a true Belgian crime. However, while that side of it was excellent, there's a big problem with this series, and it is the title. That is what it refers to, the 12, the jury, because 6 members of the jury are just sort of chosen to be followed throughout the series and to become a bit like the main characters, and they're just not. They're not involved in the case at all. They're exactly what jurors ought to be, completely unknown to the defendant and all the witnesses. I kept waiting for it to come out that one of these jurors had some connection to the case, and then that inevitable drama over a possible mistrial and all the rest of it, as well as finally knowing the reason for us following these people. And it just never comes. And yes, okay, that is realistic, but it's also not good writing. Why are we watching these characters if they're not part of the mystery of the series? Additionally, their stories aren't particularly interesting. They're okay, and they're handled with as much finesse as everything else, so they do work to an extent, but we follow 6 members of the jury, plus all the people involved in the case. So that's a lot of characters, and with the jury, most of their stories just never really have the time to complete the arc. I don't want to be heard wrong on this. The storylines for the jury are all right, and they do overlap with each other, and they're well told. So all that is fine. It's just not what this series should have been about. I think what they were going for was to demonstrate the massive role that a jury would have in a trial such as this one, where everything comes down to the way evidence is interpreted. So they want us to know the jury personally, so that when it comes down to it, we understand why one member votes one way and another in a different way, just like a sort of extended version of 12 Angry Men. Now, that could have worked, but my question would then be, why we ever see things from outside the jury's perspective? If that's the angle they were going for, then we should only ever experience the world how the jury experiences it. And that could have been amazing. And then we would have been able to justify delving into their personal lives. But what we get instead is an excellent courtroom thriller that's full of these kind of irrelevant personal stories. And for me, it's a bit of a wasted opportunity, because if this series had gone hard one way or the other, it could have been in my top 5 of all time. So although what I've said probably does sound like a bit of a turn away, I do still find this series worth watching. It's just a bit of a shame that they didn't find a way to make the jury and who they are more relevant, because to me, this was actually 2 different series. The first is about the murders and the trial, and the second is about the jury. The first show was already excellent, and the second could have been excellent, but both shows needed to only be that thing, rather than them both attempting to be both things. So in the end, I would request that you watch the 12. Request is 2 steps up from my completely neutral recommendation and 3 steps down from my highest recommendation. So it's still a good series. I do still lightly recommend it. I just wouldn't say, for example, sign up to a streaming service that you wouldn't have otherwise just to watch this series. If you happen to be learning Dutch, especially Flemish Dutch, then linguistically speaking, I would say that this series is the best of the 3 Flemish series I've reviewed, Undercover and Tabula Rasa being the other 2. But I'd also recommend that you check out my other channel, which I'll link to in the description. It's all about how to effectively learn languages and to incorporate your language learning into your everyday life so that you improve both your learning and your quality of life. I know it sounds a bit complicated, but I recommend you head over there to check out that. And of course, if you like foreign language series and films and you want to see new reviews every week, then make sure you subscribe right here at the Reykjavik Review. That is all for this one. I'll see you soon. Bye.